Welcome to the feature match area here at GP Lille, ladies and gentlemen. My name's Riley Knight, your host, joined by Simon Gertsen. Simon, good morning. Great to have you along today.
Good morning.
Ule Kutcher is on our screen here with Turbo Fog and Toe Merry with White Weenie. These guys both at 7 and 2 with decks that I guess wouldn't have been the first ones that you'd consider playing, in a GP like this. But hey, it's a pretty defensible record so far.
Yep. Uli was actually 7-1 after day one. And I've played Turbo Fog before the rotation. I really liked the deck, even though it had some tricky matchups. But I thought that with losing so many key cards that you wouldn't really be able to continue playing that kind of style of deck that tries to win with Teferi and Nexus of Fate.
Yes, critically, as you mentioned before, Simon, losing one of the fog effects. So not so much Turbo Fog as just regular fog, obeying the speed limit fog. But we'll see exactly how this list looks throughout the course of this game, I'm sure. Search for Cantor, an old favourite here, getting it done in multiple formats. But an aggressive start from Merry as well, with both a Danto Vanguard and Dauntless Bodyguard there.
Yeah, White Weenie actually can probably curve out as aggressively as any deck in the format, but it doesn't have that kind of reach that the red decks have. So while Uli's under more pressure from the creature side, and he's also on the draw, if he starts fogging, then there is no burn spells to punish him. And
this is going to be, quite a string to Uli Kutcher's bow here. The fact that he knows that if he stabilizes, let's say 5 life, it's going to be very difficult for Merry to punch through those final points of damage. Or there's no lightning strikes to go upstairs, as you mentioned. So that's an important consideration here. We'll see if Kutcher is able to stabilize in the face of this onslaught so far, powered out by mismatched basics. I will point out that is less than pleasing to me. But in any case, chart a course now for Kutcher.
There's a problem here for Uli, which is that with the creatures on board, it's already 7 power, so 2 more hits and he's dead. That means he has to start fogging on his turn 4, which is basically 1 turn before you actually want to do that.
Simon, you mentioned the fact that the Turbo Fog list, traditionally in the banned colors, now playing black, and you can see there Temple Garden and Watery Grave effortlessly assembling 4 colors of mana here as Uli Kutcher. But look at this. This is going to up the tempo as well here with Ajani, the adversary of Tyrants, coming down, putting a +1/+1 counter somewhere. Going to be on the Knight of Grace and the Adanto Vanguard.
Actually, regarding the clock management, it doesn't matter that much. Uli is still facing a 2-turn clock with or without Ajani.
But all of a sudden now, Kutcher on 4 life out of nowhere. He's cast 2 spells. But Merry has just had what a ferocious curve out, huh?
Yep.
1/2/2 and then a powerful Planeswalker.
You can spend 10 mana in the first 4 turns, and Merry used 9 of it.
Well, look at this. Kutcher's going down to 2 here to cast what I imagine is going to be a Ritual of Soot. And so that's a nice and tidy 3 for 1. But Merry sees the line, pays the 4 life to keep his Adanto Vanguard around, and as a result, Kutcher picks up his cards. But hey, you got to play your outs, right?
Yeah, I guess.
I was once playing against someone, a friend of mine, James Keating, who I am absolutely dead. 6 ways from Sunday, this bloke is dead. And he goes, all right, well, I think I've got 1 out. I think I can still, okay, so I'm just going to play my outs. He looked at me and goes, would you like to concede? I said, no, I would not. He goes, okay, well, let's go to game 2. It was a good, look, you've got to play your outs. You've got to play your outs, but didn't work for Uli Kutcher there, didn't work for James Keating. And Toe Merry, look at this. Whew. Overcome with concentration.
I think there was a quick Hail Mary.
He's in it to win it. He'll take whatever help he can get. Divine, Eldritch.
Yeah, if you play White Weenie, you're
Yeah.
Good connection.
Yeah, you'll do what you can. Let's have a look at his sideboard here. What's going to help him against Turbo? Does he know he's against Turbo Fog? Search for Azcanta into Ritual of Soot.
I think so.
With a Temple Garden?
I think so.
Yeah, probably.
What other deck would it be?
Yeah, 4-color control. 4-color control. Yeah, no. Well, in any case, let's see what tools Merry has brought to this particular table here. Not a whole lot is jumping off the page at me. Sorcerer's Spyglass, a nice one.
1 Sorcerer's Spyglass. Okay, so that's 1 out of 15. That would actually make sense.
Maybe bring in the 4th Conclave Tribunal, 3 in the main already. But apart from that, not a lot going on. Bounty Agent can destroy Search for Azcanta.
Yeah, sure. Maybe you have some weaker cards. Usually your expensive cards are not where you want to be. But this White Weenie deck doesn't even have many expensive creatures. No, I like where he's at. Actually, just curving out, casting, History of Benalia. That seems to be a really good plan. Honestly, Ajani might be the weakest card because it costs 4. It only adds 2 power to the board.
Yeah, whereas you could play a bounty agent and pay 2 to add 2 power to the board. Yeah, that may be right. Although, I guess Ajani is an important bridge towards the late game for the White Weenie deck, but I think they've kind of given up the ghost as soon as they get to that late game in this matchup.
In this particular matchup, because your board growing doesn't help you anymore.
No, that's right. I mean, against a control list, if you can play a 2-drop, play an Ajani, bring back another 2-drop, all of a sudden you've got a respectable fighting force, and they have to deal with both a Planeswalker and these creatures. Whereas against a control deck like Turbo Fog, they can just look at those 2 creatures and go, okay, cool.
Maybe when you know that there is Ritual of Suit waiting on the Turbo Fog side, then you can drop your 4 mana Ajani, get back something. But it's not about card advantage. It's about just having a board and protecting it and getting in for damage as quickly as possible.
Well, I don't know how many changes Tomeri is going to make here. Kucher, on the other hand, will surely be reconfiguring his list to make sure that he is tussling with aggressive decks, which, I mean, in a vacuum, that's what Turbo Fog's trying to do, is tussle with those aggressive decks. But there are definitely post-board tools that are going to make that a little bit easier.
Yeah, the challenge for Turbo Fog is actually what you take out. You don't have that much wiggle room when it comes to taking out cards, because you need the Planeswalker package, you need your Search for Ascantas for sure. You always want 4 Nexus of Fate in your deck so that you can maximize the chances of actually going off. And that doesn't leave... this deck doesn't have dedicated anti-control cards in the main deck that you could just take out.
Yeah, it's a pretty tight list when it comes to a lot of the components. As you say, you need those 4 copies of Nexus of Fate. You can't really trim your Teferis. There's a lot of cards that sort of have to stay in there, and so less wiggle room. And you're speaking from experience. You played this deck a fair bit.
I played this deck a lot. I played it before the rotation, and I actually went to German Nationals with it. I tested with Andreas Ganz of Switzerland, who was very successful with it at his Nationals, even though he was already the captain. I just like the style of the deck. I know not everyone likes to watch it or play against it, because...
And that's what draws you to it often.
That was the main reason.
Yes,
main reason to play it.
Simon is very much believes that fun is a zero-sum game, and that he don't want to split it 50-50. He wants all of the fun for himself.
Unfortunately, I ran into some opponents that had the same mindset.
Oh, really?
Decided to main deck Insult to Injury.
That's very disappointing of them, isn't it?
Very rude.
Very rude indeed. Adding insult to that injury.
And then after they have beaten you, they tell you, oh yeah, I saw this deck online. I really didn't want to lose to it. So I have this tech that you just lost to.
Thanks, mate. That's...
Adding insult to injury.
Adding insult to injury, exactly. Right. Well, Ule Kucher's not going to have to worry about insult to injury this time around. And in his board, I mean, again, as we say, there's just not a whole lot going on. I mean, Moment of Craving is probably the best card that he's going to be able to change things. Maybe a Hostage Taker, but even then, it's not.
It almost looks like a transformal sideboard. I also see Thief of Sanity, which is probably more like an anti-control card, but interesting sideboard options with the black for sure. Yeah,
interesting to see. The split of Ritual of Soot 2 and 1 across the main of the board, and there are some big heavy hitters in the board as well. I'll tell you that, Simon. Chromium the Mutable, Zakama, Primal Calamity. I don't think this is the matchup for them, but still pretty sweet to see stuff like that.
Sweet, yes, but also kind of weird, because where is Kucher going with this? His matchup against the control deck should already be good. I don't quite know why he would play that many heavy hitters.
Hunted Witness gets across now, and look at this. The campaign continues to find this poor old Witness with a dauntless bodyguard, keeping it alive.
Has protection now.
Yeah. It's a
Witness protection program.
It's a very much a flavor win here, Simon. Obviously, the first Witness isn't the one that's going to deliver, the key testimony.
No, that was like the fake.
Yeah.
Fake out.
And now the Venerated Loxodon also buffing up the power and toughness of these creatures thanks to its Convoke trigger there. And another mismatched planes for Mary post having Convoked. So he obviously he must have something else in hand here. Perhaps some kind of Moment of Triumph or something like that in hand.
certainly the Hunted Witnesses look a lot better now that they have been pumped by the Loxodon, because in general, 1-mana 1/1 against Turbofog is not where you want to be.
I'm looking over Mary's list. He doesn't have any 1-drop instant speed cards.
You're wondering why he tapped his 3 creatures instead
Yeah.
of attacking for 1?
To make sure he got the +1/+1 counters? Okay.
Exactly.
All right.
Because you're going to get the damage back over the next couple of turns.
The ultimate damage output will be probably, yes. It will be higher, actually, won't it?
For the Witnesses, it's easy because you get basically the next turn you've already gained it back. For the Bodyguard, it takes 2 turns.
Okay, all right, that makes sense. Well, here's Ajani, the Adversary of Tyrants. Going to put +1/+1 counters on this Loxodon and on the Soldier here, rather than the Hunted Witness, and in they come. So already one Ritual of Soot down. Let's see if Kutcher is going to be able to clean out some more chimneys here. And reveals 5 lands and concedes. Termeri gets involved with a little bit of still had all these, which, you know, it's always great to see. And Kutcher, well, has to take the loss on the chin. That was an unfortunate draw. I think he was more or less all in on that Ritual of Soot there, and ultimately wasn't quite enough. We saw the Planeswalkers doing good work, ultimately, in the face of what this...
The Bodyguard also.
Yeah.
Everything worked out quite well, and also the Turbofog deck didn't do anything, so...
That's it's always a danger when you sit down a game of Magic, don't really do anything. It doesn't tend to work well.
But this hasn't really convinced me. Now, I know Uli was 7-1 going into day 2. Now he's taken 2 losses straight into day 2. Not the best sign.
No. Well, we'll keep an eye on things as they go out and more updates as they come to hand, my friends. But right now, we're going to take a break. We've got more Magic coming your way after this, however. We've got Time Walk lined up for you, so stick around, because on the other side of this, we'll be back with more Magic from GP Lille. Welcome back to the tournament floor here at GP Lille. Whichever far-flung corner of the universe you're watching from, ladies and gentlemen, I bid you welcome to our coverage of this standard event. My name's Riley Knight, joined by the Pro Tour champion Simon Gertzen, standing stalwart at my side and suffering my silly nonsense like the best of them. We are going to get underway with more silly nonsense here, and as we get stuck into this Time Walk Magic match, Roman Frunke and Rick Terhorst here. We've got Jeskai control mono red dragons. We've seen some mono red lists throughout the weekend, but they haven't been the mono red lists we've expected, Simon.
No, they've been actually a lot more big red decks than we thought. Not a lot of aggro decks here. So let's see what these dragons are. I see, of course, Sarkhan Fireblood, Varix Bladewing, Latlith Dragon Queen, Demanding Dragon, of course.
Oh yeah, no. We're not. This is not a half-baked sort of. You know, sometimes there's like one or two copies. Like, you know, there's a Boros deck that's got a couple of copies of Lyra Dawnbringer. Oh, Boros Angels. Nah, get that out of here. That's a Boros aggro deck with Lyra Dawnbringer. This is a proper dragons deck. We're gonna see some. We're gonna see some proper, good and honest dragons.
Maybe it looks like we're seeing a bit more of the Jeskai control side this game.
Okay, yeah, we're gonna see. Perhaps Rick Terhorst not find his third land and then concede miserably. Nope, there it is. Okay, dragons. Here they come. Roman Frunke, however, on a much more mainstream choice here with Jeskai control. This is a deck we've seen before, Simon. I'm sure we'll see it again. Nothing too special going on in this one, although it is playing main deck Crackling Drakes, which I know you're not a huge fan of.
Well, I think it's entirely defensible, especially coming into the event. Nobody really knew what was going on. I don't love the planes in conjunction with Crackling Drakes. That just is kind of a nombo. But ultimately, I think the games we've seen so far, the matches we've seen so far, Jeskai doesn't actually need the Crackling Drakes to beat Golgari, to beat other control decks. So I will start to experiment with the creatureless Jeskai lists that I've seen.
Well, here is the Crackling Drake for Frunke. And I think just a 2/4 at this stage. Although it's drawn a card, so not a bad rate. Although, of course, very, very difficult to cast, as you mentioned.
Drakes versus dragons coming to you.
Yeah, I mean, you got to put your money on the dragons, right?
I think so.
I think so too.
Just from.
Oh, and look at this, the Rick Terhorst, very, very, stridently indicating which creature type is superior, with Spit Flame taking down the Crackling Drake. Although that's not a great trade. If he gets back the Spit Flame, it becomes a little bit better, and you'd think he's obviously got plenty of ways to do that, but right now he's just down a card.
Yep.
Search for Azcanta, bins a Sinister Sabotage. Looks like Frunke is determined to hit those land drops. He's got 6 now, so Counterspell in hand, in addition to a Deafening Clarion at the very least. And Rick Terhorst is drawing out now, finding those mountains. And so let's see what he's up to with this turn.
The big finish. Wily Goblin. No.
No, not quite. No. Rekindling. Well, that's not a dragon. And Roman Frunke says, mate, I thought we were here to play with dragons. Get that bird out of here, my friend. Steam Vents surveilled to the bin as Frunke gets closer and closer to flipping that search for Azcanta. I think he can do it now. Yeah, look at this. He doesn't need to even bin this top card. Of course, he can if he chooses. But in any case, we do have the option of opening up the Sunken Ruin here for Roman Frunke. Going to keep it on top. So, Azcanta the Sunken Ruin emerges from beneath the waves, and in hand, Deafening Clarion, Cleansing Nova, and Chemist's Insight. A great hand.
Absolutely. And also the ability to start using that Azcanta right away.
So in response to this Rekindling Phoenix, going to go digging, finds Ral, is it Viceroy? Visit Iceroy? It's a slightly different
Viceroy.
position. Oh, the Viceroy? The Itzet? Viceroy.
Viceroy. Roman actually could have cast Chemist's Insight to find some lands and then still had the mana to activate Azcanta. I would have done that because you're not really lacking non-lands at this stage, so you want to be casting that Chemist's Insight at some point anyway.
And no shortage of ways for Frunke to control the board here. Although this is an awkward one. Are we going to see... is it going to be Chemist's... Oh, sorry. Oh, no, we're going to see Ral. All right, is it Viceroy? I thought we might see the Cleansing Nova there, but this one seems okay. So, upstairs with Ral. And a Justice Strike to remove the Rekindling Phoenix. And then downstairs with Ral, I should say, sorry, to destroy the Elemental token. Often erroneously referred to as an egg. Everyone knows that phoenixes don't come from eggs. Simon?
Nope, they come from ash.
Ash, that's right. I guess a mother phoenix just poops out a pile of ash from which the first phoenix comes from. Or
That's an interesting question.
Do phoenixes ever? I mean, is there just a finite number of phoenixes?
Maybe they do come from eggs.
Like initially,
the first time.
Right.
You know, there was the birth.
But the thing is, if I don't think that they're because the thing is, phoenixes are immortal. So right now there would be an infinite number of phoenixes.
No, if they could reproduce.
If they could reproduce, the world would be overrun with them.
No, then no eggs.
Yeah, there's no eggs. There's no eggs involved in phoenix biology. You can trust me.
There's also very little biology involved. It's more about...
It's mostly magic. It's mostly magic and fantasy, ladies and gentlemen. Speaking of fantasy, here is a big old demanding dragon. And Roman Frinker meets the demands of this dragon and takes 5. So, off the top, Teferi. And it looks like a Chemist's Insight as well. That's a nice one to be able to stick in your bin. Let's see what Frinker's move is here. A lot of people may be asking... Sinister Sabotage there. A lot of people may be asking what came first, the Phoenix or the egg. Do you know that there is actually a definitive answer to what came first, the chicken or the egg?
I've heard that.
There is a definitive scientific answer to that question.
Has it to do with how chicken were dinosaurs?
Effectively, it's to do with the evolution of chickens. Yeah. Like, definitively, scientifically speaking, the egg came first. Because the first chicken, the first thing that was that you could... Whenever it passed its threshold of chickenness... To
be classified as a chicken.
It came from an egg, right?
Yep.
Which was laid by the very, very last... Non-chicken. And where that exact point is obviously impossible to determine, because how do you measure...
But that wasn't the question.
That's not the question, exactly. How do you measure the chickenness of a chicken? Very difficult to do. You know, pecking comes into it. Feathers, obviously. Wattles and combs is an important factor as well. But it's very difficult to properly quantify. But yes, the egg came first. So the next time you're talking to, someone about this sort of philosophical quandary, as we see the Dragon Queen, Lathalis, come down, you can be that guy, Simon. Mm-hmm. You can be that guy and say, actually, and everyone will love you for it.
Great party.
Oh.
Great conversation starter.
Great conversation starter. Great conversation ender as well. You can walk away from that knowing that you really showed them. You had the last word and you made yourself look very smart. So double Planeswalkers now for Roman Frinker and Richter Horst with the Dragon Queen. So we've got hard-hitting heavyweights on both sides of the battlefield. Frinker decides he's got enough copies of Deafening Clarion and instead chooses a Justice Strike. This card well positioned against most of these evenly statted dragon creatures.
Yep, absolutely. 2 mana that removes, I believe, every creature in Rick's deck.
It's not often that we see dragons with big old butts. 5/6 dragons or, 2/4 dragons.
No, that's very rare.
Very rare indeed. Dragons lithe and nimble. And here's Wily Goblin. Talk to us about this card, Simon.
I'm not a fan. What can I say? You get a treasure token. Roman also hasn't seen it before.
Yes. Yeah, we got a reader, ladies and gentlemen. Perhaps Frinker didn't draft a lot of Ixalan because there's no... I mean, you can't fault him for not knowing this super weird uncommon. Even in Limited, it wasn't played that much.
No, there are formats where you're happy for that kind of mana boost. I'm talking Simian Spirit Guide, Lotus Petal kind of cards. In Standard, I just don't see it. The upside of a mana boost that you have to invest 2 mana into, and you get just a tiny 1/1 for it. I just don't love it. Yeah,
it really doesn't do it for me. I mean, if it were a 2/2, if it were a real creature, maybe that would help. But yeah, it's not a great card. Here's a Chemist's Insight now. I'm going to draw 2 cards. Roman Frinker really firing on all cylinders here. Doesn't look to be in too much trouble. The power of the mono-red dragons has been well and truly contained by what's going on the left-hand side of your screen. And look at these 2 partners in crime here. 2 lands now off the top for Ral. And Teferi will be able to snag another card as well. Frinker drawing 4 cards a turn, maybe 5 if he starts untapping Azcanta the Sunken Ruin. And here's a Crackling Drake. This one may go the distance, Simon.
Yep, hopefully. Oh no, I think there's a fight with fire waiting
Oh,
in the wings.
yeah. So we'll have yet more. Is it, Jeskai control action here. He has 5 mana now, and it's a Shivan Fire instead.
So, classical control strategy would be to let this Shivan Fire resolve, because it's not a threat. So you don't need to counter it. On the other hand, you're clearly winning this game, and countering this Shivan Fire would just save all of you a bunch of time.
Well, it's going to be a blink of an eye for full value here.
Oh, maybe
no,
not.
half value. Okay.
Half value, I think, is fine. You get to draw the card that's still the draw trigger that's still on the stack.
Yep.
And you just get to recast the Drake.
Oh, straight away, yes, of course. That Plains was handily tapped to cast the blink of an eye there. Smart stuff from Frinker. So you can just redeploy this this little Draco if he so chooses. But no, going to discard a Sacred Foundry instead. I mean, he'd have to discard regardless of whether he cast it or not. And looking to keep that Syncopate open, maybe some other interaction here. Make sure to Horse doesn't get too much of a foothold on the battlefield here.
Yeah, didn't want to tap out. Understandably, he has full control of the game, of course. And at some point, Rick should just move on to game 2.
Syncopate now for 2 in the face of this demanding dragon. Gets slapped out of here. And that's the end of him. So, to Horst ends his turn. Back to Frinker, who's got 500,000 cards in hand. Going to get 500,000 more as well next turn. Seems to be some level of discussion at the table. And Rick to Horst, as you say, Simon, recognising the writing on the wall, having a good old read of it. It was sort of daubed in enormous letters with a huge brush. And so he's going, yes, okay, I'm stone cold dead. So we'll have a look at the sideboards of these two players right now and see exactly what's going on with both Jeskai Control and Mono Red Dragons. Let's kick things off with Jeskai Control. This list a little bit more standard than we've, than the one on the right. So not a whole lot in here that is going to change things too much. Maybe that Lava Coil can take down some of the mid-sized dragons.
Mm-hmm.
Lyra Dawnbringer is a nice way to contest the air as well.
Lava Coil also good against the Phoenix.
Oh, of course. Yes. So you think that one coming in. I like Disdainful Stroke as well.
Me too. Disdainful Stroke should be a very easy inclusion. You have so many good targets. Doesn't deal with Sarkhan, but everything that Sarkhan will power out, you can counter.
Yeah, and I mean, oh no. What a downside. My counterspell doesn't counter your 3-drop Planeswalker that does basically nothing. How terrible.
This matchup looks tremendous for Jeskai Control.
I think so. I mean, I'm just looking at the main deck and thinking, what does he take out? I mean, take out the Crackling Drakes, mate. Take out the Crackling Drakes, leave everything else in. You're gonna, you could win with your eyes closed.
It doesn't really matter what you take out. I mean, that's maybe not quite true, but
take it all your lands.
No, all your removal actually kills the dragons despite their size.
Yeah.
And that just means your opponent is trying to play an aggro game, but investing 4 and 5 mana into their threats, as opposed to an aggro that invests 1, 2, and 3 mana into their threats.
And so this is the power of Justice Strike, right? In most red decks, we don't see them able to, hustle and tussle with 4/4s and 5/5s. But Justice Strike changes that.
Yeah, it's this is basically Terminate in this matchup.
I agree,
and that's huge.
What about for Rick to Horst? Has he got anything in the sideboard that may help him out here?
So I do like his sideboard because he has 2 Sorcerer's Spyglass.
Okay.
And an Immortal Sun.
All right.
Now, Roman would need to anticipate that and bring in Invoke the Divine. Otherwise, he needs to draw his Cleansing Nova to get rid of these artifacts. So that's for the first part of the equation. The other thing is that there are some more threats that are very different because they are not dragons. Karn Sign of Urza.
All right.
And 2 Banefires. So Banefire is a scary card to play against when you are Jeskai Control. Yes.
It's just whether Rick to Horst can poke through the damage. I mean, he didn't get to a single combat step there. Can we point that out as well?
Yes. I think you hit the nail on the head there. Banefire is good for the last points of damage.
Yep.
But it's not possible to deal 20 with it. Well, it's possible, but it's not going to happen in this kind of matchup.
No, and even if it does, I mean, just how late are we at in the game where Rick to Horst has 21 lands and Frinker hasn't won the game yet? Yeah, I don't think that
even 11 lands and 2 Banefires is a pipe dream.
Yes.
It's super unrealistic.
But if Horst can get off to a flying start, get in for 12, 15 points of damage with his dragons and his phoenixes, then the Banefire's alive to do the final 5 or 6 points, because of course they can't be counted at that stage.
And that's the key, and that is where I like to see Karn and the Immortal Sun to actually get to that stage in the game,
prolonging the game for sure.
Definitely, I think it's clearly better after sideboarding, because I think before sideboarding it was just a rout. There's no way that Jeskai Control loses game 1 in this matchup.
Well, let's have a look at the opening hands of these two players here. Jeskai Control seems to have a decent mix of lands and spells from what I can see, and the same could be said of Rick to Horst, although these players are not giving us the best view of their cards. Looks like we're off to the races. And the old land go from both players here.
Rick is trying or is going to accelerate with Wily Goblin. See if that creature is more helpful than last game.
There it is, little 1/1, bringing along a boatload of booty with it. And that treasure token could power out a 4-drop next turn. Frinker. No blue mana for him just yet.
That could be a problem.
Yeah.
I see another red-white land in his hand.
I think so, yeah. So a mile and a half away from casting Sinister Sabotage here. And Wily Goblin gets busy.
Also no counter magic available.
Ooh, hello, look at this. Are we going to see Horst really get into this game? Look at this, Verix Blade Wing.
I don't love that. I don't love that the threat there is one that just dies to Justice Strike. I assume that Rick de Horst didn't have an alternative, but it would have been so much better if he had a Phoenix there.
So, my little mate, Riley Goblin, once again, poking through. And here's a second Verix now. Frinker this time without an answer, although Settle the Wreckage in hand, which he will be able to cast thanks to that island off the top. So he's got an option here. He can either cast Settle, or perhaps a Chemist's Insight in order to continue to draw more lands. What are you thinking, Simon?
I like Chemist's Insight.
Yeah.
You want to you have to cast it anyway at some point, and that Settle the Wreckage could actually get another big creature next turn.
No. Going to see a Settle here from Frinker. Very happy to pull the trigger on that a little bit earlier than you might have thought. And I have to say, I don't necessarily think that's the best way to have gone about it. But hey, he's the one of the feature match, not me.
It's a very defensible play. It's just now there's going to be another dragon coming down, or at least that's what you have to assume. And then when do you actually get to cast that Chemist's Insight? You're probably going to delay it even further.
And this is what I'm thinking. Franker there, he takes the hit, loses some life, casts his Chemist's Insight, finds a tap land, plays that, Settle the Wreckage next turn. What's Horst going to do about it? He can't counter it. He can't make his creatures indestructible. He's just going to absolutely eat it. So I think he
was in fact heavily rewarded for his play because there was no follow-up.
Yeah.
But that's like you don't want to be playing for the best case scenario. You want to be playing for the average or even worst case scenarios as a control deck.
And right now, this is the worst case scenario for Rick to Horst, because Frinker is able to slam it to Fairy and keep up an Essence Scatter in hand. And now with this Steam Vents as well, if that comes into play untapped, then to Horst is going to be in a world of pain here. Right now, Frinker in not quite a world of pain, maybe a country of pain, maybe even just a state of pain with taking 2 there. But now to Fairy, going to draw a card. Now, if Frinker doesn't do anything with his mana here, he could have just played the Steam Vents tapped and untapped it, but, well, still could have done that anyway. Here's a Lyra Dawnbringer. But now, untapping 2 lands means that counter magic is available.
Yeah, Rick might have a response here before Roman gets to untap his lands, but I'm also very surprised that that this Shivan Fire is still in the deck after sideboarding.
Yeah. Well, that's a stone cold 2-for-1 there for Rick to Horst. Or against Rick to Horst, I should say, as Frinker loses his Lyra Dawnbringer to double Shivan Fire. But hey, he's probably not too worried about that. That's not a bad exchange for him. And now to Horst. Karn, Sign of Urza, probably going to eat a Sinister Sabotage here. Quicker than blinking, yes indeed. Can't allow that Planeswalker to resolve. And so Frinker now firing on all cylinders. He's really getting it done, Simon.
Yeah, I mean, this game was basically over and effectively went as we saw in game 1. Sure, Wily Goblin got in for 2 points of damage, but after that, Rick's Dragons didn't have anything more to do. I also, once again, want to mention how the amount of lands in the Mono Red Dragons deck and the Wily Goblins really don't synergize all that well. You have good mana development. You don't need the explosiveness of Wily Goblin, if you can even call it that.
Chemist's Insight from Frunker, costing an effective 2 thanks to the Teferi trigger. Back to Horst, who I think found a spit flame off the top. I don't know how much flame he's going to be able to spit, however, as we see Chemist's Insight discarding a land to draw 2 more for Frunker. He's got a full grip, Teferi going off, and things looking very good for the control player here. Don't know how many cards he got in hand. Like 9 cards in hand, Simon? A bunch, anyway.
We might see the all of these mountains get exiled soon.
Yep. Yep. They say you can't move mountains, but Teferi, Hero of Dominaria, says, hold my beer. Search for Azcanta, effectively for free, thanks to the untapped trigger again now. And here is Sarkhan Fireblood. Much less potent planeswalker than Teferi. It's fairly obvious.
I mean, they both make 2 mana.
That's very true. Yeah, they both help you draw cards off the top of your library, and they both have game-winning ultimates.
One of them makes dragons.
So Frunker thinking about things here, whether he's going to allow this this Sarkhan to resolve. I'm not too scared of it. I mean, I guess it helps him draw further action, but I mean, whatever, right?
Sure, but you're almost flooded here when it comes to answers. So when you look at that Sarkhan, it means that the threat density of Richter Horst's draw steps is just going to be almost doubled, and you just don't want that to happen.
Okay, all right. Just because he can start discarding useless cards, yeah, that makes sense. All right. So Frunker syncopates for 1 million. And away goes Sarkhan. And search for Azcanta. A very, very quick expedition here, Simon. Looks like it's going to flip straight away. 7 cards already in the bin.
Also in these kind of spots, you have a good read about Sarkhan being the draw, having been the draw step of the Mono Red Dragons deck, and Richter Horst didn't do anything to threaten you before, so it's not like you're risking much by tapping out for Syncopate.
Teferi goes further and further upstairs here. And Frunker really just putting the finishing touches on this game, enjoying playing with his food here. Another Teferi off the top, but it's going to be a Justice Strike, the pick here from this Azcanta activation. Frunker moves to discard. Oh no, he's going to play a Plains. It's probably a better way to do it. And ships the turn, untapping the Azcanta. Discards a Steam Vents. All right, so the lock is more or less assembled at this stage, but Horst is battling very bravely. Here's a Wily Goblin. You're countering that one, son. Yes, you are. Respect paid.
Just so we don't have to discard.
And Richter Horst says, well, if I don't have my mighty Wily Goblin to ride a victory on, what hope do I have? And he's going to pack him up. So that is that, my friends. That is that. We do have more Time Walk Magic, of course, to bring you. We're going to get that one set up. And we did notice that there is an intermittent stuttering on your screens here and there. We will get that fixed. It's something we're working on, tinkering around under the hood. And as soon as we can, we'll fix up that issue for you. But work in progress right now, my friends. We do apologise for that. Apologise for the disruption to your viewing pleasure. Last thing that we'd want to do, of course, interrupt something like that. Let's move on and have a look at our next Time Walk match, this time between Patrick Kistler and Gero Lemke. We've got Golgari Midrange. We've seen this deck before. We'll see it again, Simon. But what's going on with Grixis Surveil?
Good question. We actually saw Dimir Surveil yesterday.
Yeah.
And that was kind of impressive with Disinformation Campaign.
Which information campaign?
That information campaign. Doom Whisperer,
Uh-huh.
Blood Operative. I really like the deck that Helmut Sommersberger brought to the table, not because of its Golgari matchup, but especially how good it looked against control.
Well, this one also playing 4 copies of Disinformation Campaign, and on top of that, whew, Simon, if you thought that Doom Whisperer was a big old boy, how about 4 copies of Nicol Bolas the Ravager?
Nice. A card that we rarely see these days, but of course, if you play Grixis, it doesn't surveil though.
No, it doesn't surveil. It does get him to discard cards, which is the name of the game when it comes to Disinformation Campaigns. So
this is actually much less of a surveil deck. This is just a Grixis control deck.
I mean, there is a reasonably high surveil component. There's Discovery Dispersal, there's Thought Erasure, there's Sinister Sabotage. I guess it's not quite as all-in.
Well, you're playing surveil cards because they are good on their own.
Okay, all right.
You're not playing surveil cards just because they surveil and make your deck tick. Because
so it's much less. It's much less all-in on the surveil.
It's not built around surveil. It's built around the power of Grixis control elements, and then you have the Disinformation Campaign, and you just happen to have 10 cards that have the word surveil on them.
So Nicol Bolas the Ravager comes down, and Lemke discards a cast down, and here we have the option for Kistler to either take a Forest or a Golgari Finebroker. He puts the Finebroker into Lemke's hand.
Interesting choice there. I assume that, and I like this. I like this decision because the Grixis surveil deck, in the end, doesn't want Garo to just develop more and more lands, because that's usually how you win the matchup. Whereas a Finebroker, you can just counter and that's fine. You're kind of trading resources, which is what you want to do. It's an aggressive decision because ultimately you have to assume that the Golgari midrange deck will hit their land drops.
Shivan Fire removes the Ravenous Chupacabra, and I like to see that Eldest Reborn there in Kistler's hand. That means that Khan is going to be under siege if Lemke doesn't commit further to the board.
And I saw I took a quick peek at his deck list, and we are talking about 4 Eldest Reborn.
Yeah, this is not mucking around, Patrick Kistler. No half measures here, but Carnage Tyrant is taken from that Khan there. Very appropriate. I guess it's now Carnage Tyrant spelled with a K. And Kistler's going to have to find an answer.
The Eldest Reborn is an answer to one of those.
Yes, but I think you just bin the Khan, right?
That would make the most sense to me.
You got your value out of it already, and then there's a 7/6 that Grixis has a lot of trouble removing.
I do think you could sacrifice the Carnage Tyrant and just follow up with your Finebroker.
Oh yeah, yep.
That wouldn't be terrible, I think.
And keep the Khan ticking over in the meanwhile. I mean, you could also bring back the Khan, but that sort of it means you give up on value, and instead you're just going for damage, which isn't necessarily the fastest way to win the game here. Control decks being what they are, in being able to, hold off onslaughts as best as possible. So here, Garo Lemke is being put to the question. What will you sacrifice to this Eldest Reborn? And he goes for the Khan, Simon.
Very quick decision. I think this is a much tougher choice than Garo made it look.
Well, he's got a 7/6 ready to hustle and bustle here, and another Khan in hand. Maybe that goes some way to explain it.
Okay, that's a very good reason then.
Carnage Tyrant comes across for 7. It's very much been a marquee card of this tournament. And a second one as well.
I wanted to say you have to deploy a second creature to be safe from another Edict effect. I don't know if that counts, but I'll take it. That's a very, very nice way to have a 2-turn clock here.
Stamp your seal of authority on this game. So we see the Eldest Reborn. Lemke's going to have to discard here.
And Kistler needs to find a blocker.
Yeah, I mean, he's just stone cold dead to these 2 Carnage Tyrants if he doesn't do anything. He's got to have something here. His hand might just be full of removal, though, Simon. So, Vraska's Contempt. The discard here for Lemke.
And it's funny how we've seen that the Jeskai decks actually have ways to deal with the Carnage Tyrants these days. But this Grixis surveil deck looks pretty weak to it, despite the 4 Eldest Reborn. There's just, Edict effects need an empty board, and I don't think that Grixis has the luxury of playing Detection Tower.
Kistler now has to pack up his cards after having lost game number 1 to the double Carnage Tyrant. A terrible lizard. Very well and truly getting it done here for him. And let's see, or for Lemke, I should say, let's see if Kistler can bounce back and rally here. Have we got, how many Carnage Tyrants is he going to have to contend with here out of Lemke's deck?
Let's see. 4 Carnage Tyrants.
The full 4.
In the main deck.
See, that's pretty, that's really a sign of the times, Simon. 3 minute now for a disinformation campaign. Let's see what Lemke has to say about that. He's got a nice full grip. He picked up a fresh card from the Merfolk Branchwalker. I think it was at Woodland Cemetery. And so he's got no shortage of cards to discard, but a difficult decision for him to make here as to which one it's going to be. Ravenous Chupacabra. Kistler draws and then ships. Back to Lemke. He's got a Jadelight Ranger in hand. That may be the play here after an attack for 2.
On turn 3, Jadelight Ranger is almost always the best card you can play.
Explore number 1. Puts a Llanowar in the bin. And number 2, a Midnight Reaper. That gives Lemke pause.
Lemke really wants more lands.
He does. He definitely does. Simon, you've talked a little bit about the 1-2 punch of Carnage Tyrant plus Find Finality as being just such a huge play, especially in the Golgari Mirror. I'm interested to see that Lemke has left in Find Finality, even though in this matchup it's not at its best. I mean, it does kill Nicol Bolas, but...
I think you want to cast Find.
Is that the reason?
Yeah. Just get back 2 Explore creatures. Yeah. Get back a Carnage Tyrant. Also somehow weakens the third chapter of The Eldest Reborn. I like it. I like keeping it in.
Okay. I guess the finality part is a little less relevant, although, of course, it can still be cast. Take down those creatures. Kistler also playing Rekindling Phoenix and Siege Gang Commander. See how much impact the card has, but right now it's Mono Merfolk Beatdown with Jadelight Ranger eating of Vraska's Contempt. So Kistler, his life total doesn't change, and it's back to Lemke now, who plays a Kral Harpooner as a land. An interesting strategical decision there.
Well, he needed more land, so...
Just play a 2-drop as a land?
I would have put the Midnight Reaper into the graveyard with the second Explore.
Yeah, he just wants to hit those land drops and
then just cast your Find Broker and get it back. I mean, that's what's the problem?
Yeah, Lemke is kind of bleeding value here with this play. Could have been a Kral Harpooner and maybe a Find even to get something back, but he's not the only one having mana issues. Kistler not only stuck on 4 lands, no red mana for him here. So an attack for 5. Kistler's down to 11. He doesn't have too much to say about it. Look at that. His hand has got a fair bit of gas in it, but just nowhere to cast it. Is that a Chemist's Insight? I don't think it is. No, it can't be. He's not playing them. Bet he bloody wishes he had one, Simon.
Yeah, but I don't think you can play Disinformation Campaign and Chemist's Insight in the same deck. You're just going to have to invest too many slots.
So Lemke now. Going to go for the Find Broker. And has the choice between Ravenous Chupacabra and Llanowar Elves. But Disdainful Stroke takes the Find Broker out of the equation altogether. Back to Kistler now. See if we can find that 5th land. Ugh, no luck. Or was that an island? Surely not. My eyes aren't what they used to be, Simon.
It would also be very surprising if Project needs that long to drop an island.
To think about playing the island. So, no, it's a Thought Erasure instead. So that's going to return that Disinformation Campaign, which will be useful, but Kistler unable to cast it again this turn, which is slightly annoying.
Yeah, and he's losing on the board. He's losing against this hand, even if he takes the Carnage Tyrant.
Oh, mate. This is rough stuff here for Kistler, because, as you say, even if he removes that... I mean, the Carnage Tyrant is the obvious choice, but then just Find Finality as a cheap and efficient way to regain that lost value. Man, so this Golgari deck's really good.
It is.
It's really, really good.
So with that reasoning, Find Finality actually looks like the better choice.
Yeah. Spell Pierce hits the bin. Disinformation Campaign returns to Kistler's hand, and he shifts back to Lemke. He needs land. Both of these guys need land, and Lemke's the first one to find it with an Overgrown Tomb off the top. 5 more damage coming across. Kistler down to 6. Lemke can present lethal next turn and really put Kistler to the question. He may pull ahead with a 2-0 win here.
Yep, I fully expect that. I like this. And now if Patrick doesn't have an answer to that, you can see that this thought erasure was not used well.
Lemke, with the Overgrown Tomb, can play the Kral Harpooner here as well in order to present a lethal clock. I don't see any reason not to do that here, Simon.
No, even if there is a Ritual of Suit, you get to draw all these cards.
3 cards. I mean, you're celebrating, go around high-fiving your teammates at that stage.
And then you drop either Carnage Tyrant or Golgari Findbroker, depending on whether you draw a land or not.
So Lemke shocks himself and plays a Kral Harpooner, leaving 1 mana available.
I think he just wanted to play around Syncopate.
All right. Okay. Well, in any case, he is attacking for lethal here, but Vraska's Contempt is going to remove the Midnight Reaper, and that is at least going to give Kistler 1 more turn.
Yep.
As he takes a total of 3 damage.
That was very much last minute. Oh, Lemke also has a Vraska.
All right. Golgari Findbroker in hand, of course, and a Carnage Tyrant, but it's going to be Vraska Golgari Queen here.
Yeah, I like that. Diversifying the threats a little bit.
Back to Kistler. Draws. Can he find what he needs? He finds a mountain. Does that change anything? Probably not. Probably not. Let's be honest.
It's a bit too late. That Lava Coil would have been really good. Earlier,
yep.
You could have kept Lemke on much smaller board, and that also would have made the Eldest Reborn that much better.
So Lemke now forced to discard with a Disinformation campaign. Kistler's going to draw another card here, but with both Vraska and Merfolk Brand, you can see how confident Lemke is. He's discarding Carnage Tyrant here. He's got a Golgari Findbroker to bring it back, I suppose. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
What are we going to do about Golgari, Simon?
It looks like Disinformation campaign is not the way to beat Golgari, because
it looks like it.
It just shrugs off the value you're generating.
This is the thing. Like, they discard a card like, no, we'll have to get that. I'll get that back later. What do we do? Like, what are we going to do about this?
I like control decks.
Yeah.
But real control decks, you know, Jeskai, creatureless decks, maybe just a few creatures, and then you're ignoring the value because your late game, your end game is just so much stronger.
But I mean, do we need to start bringing in like graveyard hate against Golgari? Stuff like Silent Gravestone.
I don't think so. You have to be a bit more proactive. You have to, and that you can do that with Crackling Drake, but we've also seen that you can just play 4 Expand Explosion, maybe 2 Fight with Fires, and those 4 Teferis, and that'll get the job done.
So Kistler more or less taps out for Nicol Bolas the Ravager. This should be it here for Lemke. He can pretty much just force through lethal, even past this Nicol Bolas, but I think he might even have a Vraska's Contempt in hand. He does, in a foil one as well. So Kistler extends the hand, and Gero Lemke takes it out in very convincing circumstances. Golgari Midrange, Simon, I have to say, it's here to stay. I mean, this is a deck that you need to be able to beat. I mean, I'm a fan of it. I'm never going to play this list myself, obviously, but it's a deck that I think is a nice, not safety valve, but it's a fair list. It's a beatable list.
It's an absolutely fair deck. It generates a lot of value, so you have a challenge ahead of you if you want to play mid-range or control. But it's absolutely beatable, and also the mirror is, I think, it's more interesting than people give it credit for.
I think so, and I think one of the things that we'll see at the upcoming Pro Tour, of course, is the sort of crystallization of different sub-archetypes of Golgari, and I'm keen to see how that works out.
It's all about what metagame you expect.
Well, my friends, we will continue to keep an eye on how things develop here in the metagame at GP Lille. Right now, we're going to take a break. You'll be back in the booth with Rich and Moraine, however, after this. So stick around. We'll be back with more Standard from GP Lille after this.